Thank you to GameWare Create for being a channel partner. Looking for a Kickstarter game you missed or 3D printed minis? GameWare Create has a huge selection available, all at a fair price. Use the link in the description below to check out all that GameWare Create has to offer. What's up, Rockstars? Today I have a great video for you guys. We're going to be discussing the top 5 Kickstarters for board games of all time. This is going to be huge because these games are big. Tens of thousands of backers and millions of dollars raised. Let's get into it. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons and YouTube members. It is through their financial support that this channel is possible. This is a community-run channel because they are by far the biggest contributors here so that I make videos for you guys and you guys can help support me in doing so. If you can afford even just $1 a month, I would greatly appreciate it. There's a link down below and there's some cool bonuses there for you as well. Also, I'd like to thank my sponsor for today's video, INTOTHEAM. There will be a mention on the back end of this video where you can save for some really cool shirts just like this one. All right, let's go ahead and dive into it. Okay, so we're going to go in order from the biggest to the smallest biggest. We're going to do the top 5 here. So number 1 now, at least at time of recording, is Frosthaven. Now, the reason I say time of recording is because within the last 2 years, most of these have been on Kickstarter. Kickstarter, especially with board games, is blowing up. Some of it may be COVID related. Some of it has just been a long time coming. Either way, there is kind of a resurgence, and especially on Kickstarter, where more and more people are getting used to Kickstarter, are understanding that they go there for board games, and it's Kickstarter's biggest thing too. So like they know it. All right, so Frosthaven is a sequel to Gloomhaven. It was created by Isaac Childress, and again, 83,000 backers. That's not including Pledge Manager or anything like that, and almost $13 million raised. Huge success here. What makes Frosthaven the biggest? Why did it become the biggest? Well, it's because of Gloomhaven. So Isaac here, if we go to his created, we will see that he created a Forge War Euro-inspired blacksmithing and dungeoneering. It was okay. It did okay. About 2,000 backers, especially back then. Not actually too bad at all. Then he made Gloomhaven, which promised 30 minutes per player. It's just a cooperative card-driven tactical combat. We see this stuff all the time. And honestly, while it was successful, it was only about 5,000 backers. It wasn't the biggest thing ever. But once people got it and they realized how good it was, it really started to ramp up. And then it had a great retail release as well. The word got out, and what do you know? The second printing of it, 40,000 backers. Look at the difference there between first and second. This is what happens when you have a winner on your hands when it comes to the game, and then you actually deliver it. Now, a lot of people say that Kickstarter is just for, games that aren't so good or whatever. But, Gloomhaven is here, I think, to prove otherwise, that he made a game modestly. It was a great game. People loved it. People enjoyed it. It got a good retail release. More people saw it. It became kind of more mainstream. It was leading in the board game geek lists and all that kind of stuff. Reviewers were loving it. So it got a lot of coverage. So then the second printing, bam, 40,000. And again, the retail just kept going. Then he made Founders of Gloomhaven. And it was honestly a little bit less, but that's okay because it was also kind of a less scoped game. It was kind of different, just kind of set in the same world, using that Gloomhaven for that IP at this point. And then, of course, Frosthaven came out, the sequel to Gloomhaven, the proper sequel. 83,000 backers. You can see over double the amount of backers. Incredibly just amazing, especially considering that this would have done even bigger. It wasn't a great deal for Europe because of taxes and shipping and all that kind of stuff. And honestly, you didn't really need a Kickstarter anyway. I did, by the way. I run the channel here. I feel almost obligated to. But honestly, it would have done just fine almost without Kickstarter, of course. But you also could pretty much get everything you wanted for probably less because you didn't have to pay for shipping at retail if you were just willing to wait a little bit. So this was really just not only just a pre-order, but just a pre-order of the first few copies, essentially, is kind of it. It's going to retail, and he ran the campaign really kind of straightforward too. There wasn't a bunch of fuss or hubbub or anything like that. When it comes to reprints and stuff like that, it's often tempting to add stretch goals to enhance the previous version and stuff like that. but in this one, it was very much a focus on Frosthaven as Frosthaven, and kind of just working off the legacy of Gloomhaven. You could kind of view this as a 2.0. Much of his updates, there's been 88 by the way, so great communication on his part too. I've been talking about learning from Gloomhaven. Not to say that it was a bad game, but there's always room for improvement. And learning from Gloomhaven and how to make it even better, how to improve upon that, how to iterate upon that. We're going to be seeing this in very soon in the next one, actually. But before we go on to the next one, I just wanted to say that, again, I think what made Frosthaven so big was, first of all, mass appeal and eyes on it, right? It wasn't just word of mouth. It wasn't just good marketing. It wasn't just a retail release. It was having a good game that got in a lot of people's hands, that people were honestly happy with, that was done smartly, right? One of his biggest things wasn't just to go straight to Frosthaven. It was this Gloomhaven second printing. This was the big one. This is the 40,000. If he had not done this, I do not believe Frosthaven would have done this, if that makes sense. I think he was very smart in what he did. You don't have to, like, always hit it, right? Like Forge War, I apologize, was not the hit, and that's fine. Not everything you create will be great. It's just not how these things work. And I'm not saying Forge War isn't, or is great. I've honestly never even seen it, nonetheless played it. And honestly, I don't think many people have. But my point is, especially as a creator, both just creating, YouTube videos for you guys, but anything else, you just kind of have to keep trying and figure out what's worked, and then figure out why that worked, and then capitalize on it. If you wonder why a lot of YouTubers don't get bigger, or why a lot of people don't expand farther, it's because they don't realize when they had something great. Sometimes you'll see some like one-hit wonders when it comes to channels on like YouTube, for instance, that make a video and it got viral and it became really big, and then they never quite figured out what that magic sauce was, and so that's the only video like that, and all the rest is kind of lackluster. Same kind of thing there. But Isaac has it. I think he's got it. He's got a good following. He built good rapport, and that's just through running things straight and not cheating people, not lying to people, not hyping people up more than they should. All that, he's done a really good job on it, and as long as you make a good product and it sells well, you can count on that continuing to be the case as you go forward. Okay, moving on to number 2, which was the number 1 until recently, really, and that was Kingdom Death Monster 1.5. As you can see in the name 1.5, this is a kind of a sequel and iteration on it. You could compare this to the second printing that Isaac did with the Gloomhaven, but not necessarily the Frosthaven. So let's go and click on this, because again, I want to show that it didn't work right away, right? So they had an indie nerd board game meets player character miniature sculpted. I remember actually seeing this, and all they had was just some art. And they're just like, hey, we got some art. We would just like some sculpts, please. And 28 backers, a very small time thing. It did get a project we love, which is kind of interesting, because again, 28 backers was so tiny, but it still got noticed a little bit. But then they wanted to help bring a Kingdom Death iPhone game. This is fascinating. Let's go ahead and click on this, because it didn't fund successfully, and it was on Kickstarter for a whole 89 days, from September 14th to December 13th. Okay, so for a long time, and it did not work. One backer, $10. That was probably Isaac there. Now, I don't know the whole story. I didn't bother on Kicktrack because it doesn't really matter. It's not part of the point. There could have been maybe some backers that then dropped out or whatever, but 0 comments, 0 updates. This was it. They just threw this up there, right? So as you can see, whether it was, just Adam Poots putting in $10 or his wife or whoever it might be, it just is amazing to me that you can have the number 1 most funded Kickstarter campaign for years, $12,393 from $19,264. And trust me, the pledge manager has more than doubled that. I am sure. I'm positive it's done millions more. And yet, not everything is a hit or miss. You got to start somewhere. Like in my early videos, go to your favorite channel on YouTube and order their videos oldest to newest, and you will be surprised. Rarely is it great from the start. Normally there are some humble beginnings, and this is the same thing. Humble beginnings, right? Just hey, I got some art. I just need some sculpts. Hey, we just want to use this art now to like make an iPhone. Okay, that didn't work. Okay, well, let's just go full in on the Kingdom Death monster. Let's go ahead and actually make a board game. And again, only 5,000 backers. This was not a huge thing. Now 5,000 is pretty big. But suffice it to say, you know, it wasn't that big. But once they delivered it, which they did deliver it, and then came 1.5, and people realized how innovative Kingdom Death was. It really grew a whole new genre of boss battlers and AI and stuff like that, and like campaign style and city building. Like, there's a lot there that we could dive into. I'm not really concerned too much about that. I'm just concerned about the steps they took, right? So they kept trying, found something that kind of worked, made it better, delivered a great game, came back and said, okay, here's an even better version of it. And oh my gosh, look at it now. Now, another thing to note here is that this is a mature game. This is definitely a game for adults. And you'll see that trend, I think, here in a little bit. So I'm going to kind of keep iterating on that. But this is not a kids game. This is definitely a mature game for older people who have normally mid-career jobs that have money that can afford expensive board games. I think there's something there when it comes to just adults wanting to play board games like we used to, right? Adults that like this, like now, right? And then kind of hearkening back to that. I think there's a big push there. I don't know what the average age of a board gamer is, but I suspect it's a little bit higher than maybe video games or something like that. I'm not sure, but looking at this, you do see a trend line here. So I'm not even going to bother scrolling down too much. There's not really a whole lot here, except that there was a much bigger focus on like pinups and all that kind of stuff. Definitely mature, and they wore it on their sleeve. That was just fine. They were proud about it, and it sold very well. So it was kind of hitting several different, I think, markets. Delivery of a game that people really, really enjoyed, but only a few people did it, but they talked about it incessantly. And also just kind of gaining that traction and being so edgy and so out there, right? That almost writes its own articles and stuff like that too, so that you get even more coverage. So people are talking about it more, so then people are like, okay, what's this big black box with like this lantern guy on it, and what's up with all the like pinups, and what's going on here? It gets people interested, and it obviously did really well. Moving on to the next one. Number 3 is Exploding Kittens. Now, before you say, well, King of Average, you just said like it's all about like mature stuff. There was definitely a not safe for work version of this that was here. And I want to talk about that a little bit as well, but there's a not safe for work deck there. This one has boob dragons because, again, maturity. So here's the thing. By this point, this launched in late 2015, and Cards Against Humanity, which was kind of, I think, the first one to really edge into this market, was delivered around late 2011, but it did not do very big on Kickstarter. Instead, it had a great retail release afterwards. So the Kickstarter, again, funded it enough to start and get that little bit of investment in, but then retail is where it really kicked off, and it just tapped into this huge card game for adults, essentially. Like as in like very, very mature, you know, not safe for work kind of stuff, right? And then Exploding Kittens came out, and I think by that time, because it took a little while, because it delivered in 2011 to Kickstarter, but then it didn't really get into pop culture where you would see articles about it on like Vox and other stuff. Like it really got mainstream, and that was kind of a big thing for a while there until about 2015. And in 2015, then Exploding Kittens came on, and just like needle precision got exactly, I think, what made a lot of people enjoy something like Cards Against Humanity, right? Because it had the ridiculousness, it had the silliness, it had cats, and it also had not safe for work stuff as well, which is very important. But what it did differently than Cards Against Humanity is it had 2 different versions, right? Cards Against Humanity eventually came out with a kids version, but it almost like Cards Against Humanity is like synonymous with adult themed card game, right? So it didn't quite do as well as something like Exploding Kittens, which I think did well in both. What's impressive about this is not only did it make 8.7 million from 219,000 backers. That's what I'm talking about, mainstream there, right? That's the difference here. This is from, I guarantee there's a ton of brand new, never used Kickstarter before people in there. But it was not that expensive. 15,000 people just bought a deck for $20. That's it. 202,000, this was the biggest one, $35. And that's it. And notice here, the not safe for work deck. Here's the regular exploding kittens deck, right? That's the game. That's the main selling point here, right? It's at the very top. Only 15. Not safe for work deck, 202,000. So now we have Kingdom Death Monster and Exploding Kittens both targeting adults that want to play a board game with some others and that are very much into that kind of adult-oriented stuff, right? And we kind of see that in mainstream, right? You look at Game of Thrones and all this other kind of stuff. It's like, okay, there's obviously a market where the consumer has money to spend and the consumer enjoys the content and it harkens back to something that the consumer liked, whether it's board games, whether it's old fantasy stories, whatever it might be. That's a trend I'm seeing here. Now, obviously, Frosthaven does not match that, right? Frosthaven, however, I think got this a little bit more because honestly, this is probably the biggest one here because of just how many backers were here. It's insane. The fact that they got third place on $35, right? That is just a massive appeal. Whereas Kingdom Death Monster got really big and it's 19,000 is fair, but you'll notice this is probably the smallest one, but it's very expensive. So it raised a bunch that way. But again, the people who can enjoy Kingdom Death Monster typically have some disposable income. And so they're okay with spending a lot on some novelty item that they can play with other adults, right? Especially as someone with 4 kids, sometimes it's nice to get away from the kids and to spend time with other adults and actually do adult things and talk about adult things as opposed to what they found out in school or what the current friend is saying or, just whatever kind of childish stuff that revolves in their lives. Sometimes it's kind of nice to talk to people that are above 4 feet tall. So just saying. No offense to any adults that are under 4 feet tall. You're awesome people. I think Frosthaven and Kingdom of Death really got there with the price. Exploding Kittens to me is kind of the thing where if you could almost get more, in other words, if you could get that 219,000, but at something a little bit higher than 35, that's ideal. Now it's a little bit harder because the cheaper it is, the more often it's easy for people to just click, yeah, sure, why not? Right? Especially when it comes to shipping nowadays and stuff like that. But this is pretty much the ultimate thing I think you want. And notice that even though the Not Safe for Work deck got more, there are, first of all, still plenty of people that were interested in the other one. And I'm sure many of them got both, right? And so that way your game can be played with, kids, teens, adults, kind of any group you want. You can tailor it there. So you can do it at birthday parties for adults. You can do it for birthday parties for kids. You can do it at work. You can do it outside of work, after hours. You can do it in a lot of different kind of scenarios. You can play and enjoy this product. And so I think that's probably ideal, is keeping it a little bit cheaper so that you're not just getting there brute force by having people spend thousands of dollars on the game, but also having that mass appeal. Okay, so let's go in and move on from Exploding Kittens. The reason I spent a little bit longer on that is because I feel like, again, I think that's the key. I think this almost defines it to me. Nemesis Lockdown. Nemesis Lockdown was number 4 at 5,174 pounds. I don't know what that is in American money, but you guys can do it. It changes. I don't know what it was back then, especially, right? But either way, it's around the third. I might have it here. I don't know. It's kind of rough. It looks like to me it was probably around $7,136 at the time, right? So I think that's around where it goes. So just right under this 8,782. That's from a list that hopefully has transferred it correctly, but don't quote me on that. Don't quote me on anything, really. You just shouldn't quote me. But Nemesis Lockdown, again, a sequel. We had a sequel in Kingdom Death Monster. We had a sequel in Frosthaven. We have another sequel in Nemesis Lockdown. And honestly, I feel like Exploding Kittens is kind of the spiritual successor to Cards Against Humanity when it comes to the exact niche on your board game shelf or in your closet or a coffee table or whatever, that's its purpose, right? It's the new apples to apples. Right? So Nemesis came out first, and it did quite well. 30,000 backers, 3 million. Not on the top 5, but definitely getting up there towards the top 10, 15. There's a lot of 3 million stuff, and I don't know what that transfers to either. So again, don't know exactly what that is compared to these, but I know it's not the top 5. So, but I don't think it's the top 10 either, because again, there's a lot in that space. But suffice it to say, Awakened Realms delivered this and did quite well. Now we're going to go and click on Awakened Realms here again and kind of see their path here. Okay, so they had The Edge, New Miniature Universe, again, 502 backers. Humble Beginnings. Humble Beginnings has been the case for all of these. Then Awakening Gaming Terrain. They just did Terrain. Awakened Realms was originally a miniature painting company, so they didn't even make board games until then. And then this War of Mine and IP game, and look at that, 9,000. IPs matter. You won't see this in the top 5, but if you expand this as a top 10, like half the other ones, like the other half is IP games. So just saying there's that too. Because again, mainstream, it gets you more eyes on that. Okay, so they did really good. And then they did The Edge Dawnfall, kind of a sequel to this. That's kind of an easy kind of choice there. Again, didn't do quite as good, which makes sense. It's not IP related, but suffice it to say it was there. And then 12,000 Lords of Hellas, again, doing great. And then Nemesis was the final breakthrough. So again, iterate, do better each time, do a better campaign, get better marketing, get more eyes on your company, build that rapport, and then bam. Now look, the Edge Dawnfall 1.6, 5,000, which is now, it's done better every single time, but it's obviously not the moneymaker that they could have. Because again, then Tainted Grove 41,000, almost 42, Either Fields 32, Great Wall 15, and then Nemesis Lockdown that 40, almost 42,000 backers. You'll notice also the space between this, right? They did the Edge Dawnfall, they did Tainted Growth, they did Either Fields, they did Great Wall, and then came out with more Nemesis. This allowed them a lot of retail space. This is around the same kind of thing we saw back with Frosthaven when we go to Isaac and what he did. He did kind of the same thing. We had Gloomhaven, then a second printing, then this Founders thing. Then he also had like Jaws of the Lion, which was a retail only thing. So he started doing stuff off a Kickstarter and again, more retail, and then came out with Frosthaven. So there's that kind of in-between cushion where you can kind of go right off the hype, the delivery hype, and get that second printing. That's fine. I think that's great. It allows more consumers to get the stuff that they missed or they heard about and they want to get it now because, oh, they missed it, before or whatever. And give it some time, especially if you have a retail release, get more eyes on it, more love for the game, and then come and say, hey, here's something even better. Okay. That's exactly what they did here with the Nemesis Lockdown. And again, very well done. 42,000. You'll notice that. And a lot of this is thanks to like looking like aliens, right? But these numbers are almost all high. In fact, the only one that is not high, which these are all high, is the 19,000 from Kingdom Death. And again, it was such an expensive game that you could easily put over $1,000 into this Kickstarter to try and get everything. So it almost went there just from a lot just came from that. But this was earlier in and Kickstarter too, and more people are using Kickstarter now too. So it's important to keep that in mind as well. Okay, so that's Awakened Realms, again, building rapport, a little bit more of a mature theme, right? So we not like huge, but it's banking off of people who like aliens, which again, adults mid-career, who want to play a board game and experience a board game maybe with some other adults. I think kids could play Nemesis just fine personally, but again, it depends on the kids, of course. But and there might be some scary images, I don't know, whatever. But still, definitely targeted towards a more adult theme that would incline that kind of consumer, that age range of consumer, to be interested in this. I know it was for me when I all in back to Nemesis. So there's that, and again, humble beginnings, delivering a game people liked, having good retail release. Have it stew for a little bit and people enjoy it, and then come out with something better. Okay, the last one, rounding this out, the fifth one is The Seventh Continent. What Goes Up Must Come Down. Again, another sequel. This is just something that we're just seeing a lot of, right? 43,000 backers. Again, mainstream helps. Something that a lot of people like. One thing you will notice is fantasy, but different kind of fantasy. Sci-fi, fantasy. So 4 of the top 5 are fantasy based. That there is a reason for that. Now, they also all have minis except Exploding Kittens too. Exploding Kids is kind of the only thing. This is, again, this kind of outlier here. This huge outlier, though, right? But otherwise, the safest bet, miniatures, fantasy. I think it just pretty much goes that way. That's the Invoke thing. Part of that is D&D based. There are people who will buy a board game just for minis, or that are very into fantasy because of stuff like that are then into fantasy board games for the same reason. And then of course the Game of Thrones effect, and now the Wheel of Time and Lord of the Rings and all that kind of stuff too, right? But either way, this was actually, again, a sequel to The Seventh Continent. This is by Sears Pulp. If we click on this, we're going to go ahead and see what they did. And again, 12,000 right off the bat. They did great. Just really, really well done. They got a lot of eyes on this. They got a lot of big names to comment on that, which helped. Like I know Rado looked at that, and some other kind of influencers helped that a little bit. And then right after that, bam, what comes up must goes down. And then you'll notice a slight decline here. The Seventh Citadel, which actually had less. And that could be for a multitude of reasons, many reasons, but it was by no means a failure. They have had success, but definitely that first sequel did great. They really, really did good here. Did great for themselves. And again, not that bad of a, look at 10,000 people at 89 euro. So that was like $100, right? Approximately $100. There you go. So about $100. This is almost, I think, what you want is around the $100 range, and then the majority of people there. And that gets you on this list, I think, for sure. But again, you have to have a good product. You have to deliver it. You have to have good retail, and you have to, actually like run your company straight, like actually have good marketing and good interactions with people as well, and then get the word out, have big reviewers review it and review it well, and get those that branding that you get, right? I mean, a lot of that is just the branding here. So this one, the biggest one here, 2,000, 19,000 right here, $130 is what most of them did. So that's huge. That's definitely the big thing there, right? I mean, that's not small. That's a lot of money coming in from this. But again, they have the Dice Tower saying, these are one of my favorite games. It's from Tom himself, right? They have Jamie from Stone Mania Games saying that it's great too. I mean, they got all these stamps and stuff like that. That definitely helps. It really does. And not because people are like, oh my gosh, Jamie likes it, so it must be great. It's because they hear about it from Jamie. It's because they even know it exists. So much of Kickstarter, I didn't even know this was here. Marketing, whether it's ideally just delivering your game first, right? That's great marketing, right? You get people to enjoy it, and when people enjoy it, they talk to other people, and then it allows you to be able to do some kind of retail release and stuff like that. But suffice it to say, there's the top 5. They've all done millions in funding, and there's only one of them that's crazy expensive. All the rest are actually fairly cheap or average, right? I would say like Nemesis is probably about average there. But they just had a great retail, or they had, just kind of a good topic, a good kind of what's in vogue, right? Can help. And overall, just deliver a great product. And that's really all you need to do, pretty much. And try not to price people out. So, I don't know if there's anything else that you've noted between that. Oh, and obviously I think the targeting mature adults helps as well, right? If you think about it, Seventh Continent, I've always felt it's like a kind of a old LucasArts point-and-click adventure, if you ask me. I think it really scratches that itch, and it's the single reason why I would actually play this game was for that, because I really enjoy the kind of like, almost text-based, okay, I'm going to go north, and then I'm going to use this stick I found over there. And so again, very much targeted towards adults and not so much the like 12-year-old that plays Fortnite, right? That's not really the case there. But if you found anything interesting that you'd like to note or share, especially something that I could read and maybe think on, maybe include another video, let me know down below in the comments. I really do appreciate that, just because I can't think of everything. But that's what I've noted on what made these so big. Now, I would also like to direct you, while you're headed down there, to click that like button on the video, that my sponsor, INTOTHEAM, has some freaking amazing shirts that are great quality. So again, they deliver a great product, and then they release more, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I want more. And there is a discount code down below. So go in and click that so you can go and actually save on this. They have a great deal right now, 3 for $60. That's awesome. That's a great price for this quality shirt. These are the best shirts I have. They are soft. They fit well. This has been washed dozens of times. I love this shirt. I wear it all the time, and it still looks brand new. The black is still black. There's no cracking. There's no peeling. The everything looks great. It fits well. It's comfortable, and it looks awesome. I get compliments every time I wear these. I kid you not. There was one time I got 4 compliments that day just because I went out to go to the store. They're like, "Oh, I like your shirt. Hey, nice shirt." They're really cool. Okay. So again, there's a link down below to them, and they have some other new ones too. Every time I look, they have new ones. They are constantly getting new ones. This is I love this shirt. This is freaking sweet. I love skulls. I love the bright colors, as you can see. So that one's cool. But I mean, they got this Interstellar tee, which looks awesome. They got the Cosmic Polaroid tee, which is awesome. They have this new one that's like a fusion of a few of theirs, this life cycle tree. It's kind of like the Tree of Life, and it's kind of like the 9 Worlds tree, which I think is really cool. They kind of combined that. The Bourbon Voyage tee, I love the kind of a ship in a bottle, but in space. I think that's a very cool idea. Tons of cool stuff. We got Surfing Skeletons. They got some great stuff. Highly recommend you take a look and check them out. Again, there's a link down below to save some money too, so me as well save some money while you do it, and it helps me out, helps the channel out, and hopefully helps you out as well. All right, guys, that's it. That's all I had. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you hearing me ramble on about this, but I think there's a lot of cool stuff that we could learn if we actually look at the success stories. And trust me when I say the companies are looking too. We're not the only ones looking at what's popular. They're looking at what's popular. They're noticing the fantasy theme. They're noticing the mature theme. They're doing all that. They're crunching their numbers and trying to figure out how they can reproduce it. So anytime you see somebody be like, oh, well, let's just throw minis at it, or just like that, yes, it might make you successful, but it doesn't get you to the top 5. In fact, I'd still argue the biggest one is Exploding Kittens when it just comes to, 219,000 backers. That's incredible. Incredible. So anyway, there's that. You guys, thank you so much again for watching, and I will talk to you guys again very soon. I got a review for Fractal coming up. I got a few more unboxings, and I got some news I got to share with you, so stay tuned for all that. All right, thanks, guys. Bye.